The classroom was different from anything on Earth. The walls glowed with soft blue light, and the seats were designed to fit bodies of all shapes and sizes. Some students sat on chairs. Others floated in special pods filled with liquid. A few hung from the ceiling on magnetic perches. Daewon sat near the back, his notebook open on his desk. He had stopped being amazed by the alien students weeks ago. Now he just took notes like everyone else. The tall, insect-like beings didn't bother him anymore. The floating jellyfish creatures seemed normal. Even the student made of living crystal had become just another classmate. Beside him, Hana was drawing in her notebook instead of writing. She always drew when she was bored. On his other side, Taijin sat very still, staring at nothing. The youngest human in their group often looked like that, like he was somewhere else entirely. At the front of the room, Instructor Velnara moved between the desks. Her body looked like it was made of clear glass with light moving inside. Her face had no mouth, just several round eyes that could look in different directions at once. A device on her chest translated her thoughts into words everyone could understand. "Today we discuss ethics across species," her translator announced. "Every civilization develops differently. What one species considers right, another might consider wrong. We must understand these differences to live together in peace." Daewon had heard this speech before. The Galactic Union was proud of its peaceful history. Most species in the classroom had never seen war. Their worlds had solved their problems with words, not weapons. They had built spaceships while humans were still fighting with swords. Velnara moved to the center of the room. "I want to give you an example. Something to help you understand how rare violence is among civilized beings." She paused, her eyes scanning the room. "In this classroom, we have 89 students from 23 different species. We are all educated, all civilized, all peaceful." Some students nodded. Others made sounds of agreement in languages Daewon didn't understand. "So I ask you this question," Velnara continued. "Who among you has personally taken a sentient life? Who here has killed another thinking being?" The room went completely silent. Daewon felt his stomach tighten. He knew where this was going. Beside him, Hana had stopped drawing. Her pencil was frozen above the paper. Around the room, alien students looked at each other with confusion. Some seemed shocked that the instructor would even ask such a question. A few made gestures that looked like disgust. The idea seemed impossible to them. Nobody moved. Not a single alien raised a hand or tentacle or limb. Velnara's eyes glowed brighter. "You see? This is what peace looks like. This is what civilization achieves. None of you have been forced to commit violence. None of you carry that burden. This is the norm among Union species." Daewon glanced at Hana. She was looking at him. Then they both looked at Taijin, who had finally focused on the present moment. His jaw was tight. Slowly, Daewon raised his hand. Hana raised hers a second later, then Taijin, then Kyung-soo in the front row, then Bo-ra near the window. One by one, every human in the classroom raised their hand. 12 hands total, held steady in the air. All except one. Dr. Jiwoo, the medical officer, kept her hands folded in her lap. She was looking down at her desk, her face very calm and very sad. The silence changed. It became heavy and uncomfortable. Velnara's eyes flickered rapidly. She turned in a circle, counting the raised hands. I don't understand. Surely this is a mistake." "No mistake, instructor," Daewon said quietly. His hand was still up. "You asked who was killed. We're answering honestly." An alien student near the front made a sound like wind through metal pipes. Another one pulled its tentacles close to its body as if trying to make itself smaller. A third student, one of the floating jellyfish beings, drifted backward away from the nearest human. "But you are from Earth," Velnara said. Her translator made her voice sound confused and upset. "You have space travel. You have medicine. You have art and music. You sent diplomats to join us. You are civilized." "We are civilized," Hana said. Her hand was still raised. "That doesn't mean we haven't seen war." "War?" The word came from a Felloran student, a creature that looked like an otter standing on two legs. But Earth has been at peace for years. Your file said so. No active conflicts. No battles. 17 years, Kyung-soo said from the front. We've had peace for 17 years. Most of us here are older than that peace. The alien students were whispering now. The sounds filled the room in dozens of languages. Fear, confusion, and disgust mixed together. Some of them were moving away from the humans without even realizing it. A Threx security officer, tall and insect-like with armor-plated skin, spoke from where he stood by the door. Are you saying all of you have committed murder? No, Daewon said firmly. Not murder. We were soldiers. We followed orders. We protected people. We did what we had to do. Killing is killing, said another alien student. This one was Celestine, made of crystal like the instructor. Taking life is wrong. Every species knows this. Taejin made a sound that might have been a laugh, but there was no humor in it. Easy to say when nobody's ever pointed a weapon at you. Taejin, Hana said softly. A warning. The young man lowered his hand and looked down. But Daewon could see his hands were shaking. Velnara seemed to be struggling to process what was happening. Her eyes moved from one human to another, then to Dr. Jiwoo, who still hadn't raised her hand. Dr. Choi, the instructor said, you did not raise your hand. Does this mean you have not taken life? Jiwoo looked up. Her face was gentle, but her eyes were tired. The kind of tired that came from years, not just hours. I was a combat medic instructor, a trauma surgeon. I've worked in 4 war zones over 6 years. Then you were not required to fight. You healed people. I held pressure on wounds while soldiers died in my arms, Jiwoo said quietly. I've done surgery in tents while bombs fell outside. I've had to choose which patients to treat first and which ones to let die because we didn't have enough medicine or time or blood. She paused. I've never pulled a trigger, but I've made choices that ended lives just as surely. I just did it with triage tags instead of bullets. The room was completely silent now. Even the whispering had stopped. Velnara's translator made a sound like static. I need to report this to my superiors. This changes many things. She looked at the human students, all 12 of them. I must ask all humans to remain after class. The rest of you are dismissed. The alien students couldn't leave fast enough. They grabbed their belongings and hurried out, giving the humans as much space as possible. Some of them looked back with wide eyes. Others wouldn't look at all. Within minutes, the classroom was empty, except for the 12 humans, instructor, Velnara, and 2 Threx security officers who had moved to stand by the doors. Daewon lowered his hand finally. It had started to hurt from holding it up so long. Around him, the other humans waited. They all knew this conversation was coming eventually. They had all known since the day they arrived on this ship. The Galactic Union didn't understand humans. Not really. They had read Earth's history files. They had studied human culture and biology. They had welcomed Earth into their peaceful alliance of worlds. But they had never asked the right questions. Now someone had asked, and the humans had answered honestly. Outside the classroom windows, stars streaked past as the ship traveled through space. The Concordia was massive, home to thousands of students from dozens of worlds. It was a place of learning and peace. But sitting in that classroom, surrounded by security guards and a frightened instructor, Daewon wondered if humans would ever really fit in here. They came from a world that still remembered war. They carried scars that most species couldn't understand. Taijin was staring at his hands. Hana was very still. Jiwoo had her eyes closed, maybe praying or maybe just tired. Well, Kyung-soo said into the silence, that could have gone better. Nobody laughed. But Daewon saw a few small smiles, humor in dark moments. That was human too. Velnara turned to face them. Her eyes were no longer glowing bright. They looked dim and uncertain. Explain, she said simply. Please help me understand. The 12 humans sat in a half circle facing Instructor Velnara and the 2 Threx security officers. The classroom felt much larger now that all the other students were gone. The glowing walls seemed dimmer somehow, or maybe that was just how Daewon felt. One of the Threx officers stepped forward. His name was Krill, according to the translator badge on his chest. He was tall, maybe 8 feet, with a body covered in green and black armor plating. His face had large compound eyes and mandibles that clicked when he spoke. "We need to understand," Krill said. His translator made his voice sound calm, but his body language showed tension. "How is it possible that trained professionals, educated people like yourselves, have all committed acts of violence?" Hana spoke first. She had always been good at explaining things. "On Earth, military service is common. Some countries require it. Others have volunteer armies. Almost everyone here served before we joined the diplomatic corps. But why?" Velnara asked. Her eyes dimmed and brightened with confusion. "You have technology. You have education. You have reached the stars. Why do you still prepare for war?" Daewon leaned forward. "Because peace doesn't last forever. We hope it does. We work to make it last. But hope isn't enough. We prepare for the worst while working for the best." The second Threx officer made a clicking sound. "This seems primitive, paranoid." "Maybe," Kyung-soo said from his seat. "But our planet has 7 billion people and over 190 countries. We speak thousands of languages. We have different religions, different governments, different ways of seeing the world. Sometimes those differences lead to conflict." Velnara moved closer to them. "But you have the United Nations. You have international law. Your file said Earth has systems for peaceful resolution." "We do," Hana agreed. "And they work most of the time. But not always. Not everywhere. There are still places where people suffer, where violence happens, where someone needs to step in and stop it." Krill's mandibles clicked rapidly. "Give examples. Help us understand your individual experiences." There was a long pause. Nobody wanted to go first. Finally, Daewon took a breath. "I'm from Korea," he said. "My country requires military service. Every man serves for about 2 years. I did my mandatory service, then volunteered to stay longer. I became a combat engineer." "What does that mean?" Velnara asked. "I cleared landmines. Unexploded bombs. Dangerous materials left over from old wars. My country was divided for decades. We fought a terrible war. Even now, 70 years later, there are still mines in the ground. Still old weapons that can kill." He paused. "Sometimes those sites were guarded by people who didn't want us there. Sometimes we had to fight our way in to make the area safe." Hana went next. "I was in the Navy. Communications specialist. We did anti-piracy work off the coast of Africa. One night we got a distress call from a cargo ship. Pirates had boarded it. Killed 3 crew members. Took the rest hostage." She looked at her hands. "We arrived in time to save most of them. But not in time to save everyone. And the pirates, they didn't surrender. They fought, so we fought back." Around the circle, other humans shared their stories. Bora talked about serving in a peacekeeping mission that turned violent when local militias attacked a refugee camp. Minho described training exercises that became real when a neighboring country crossed a border. Sangwoo had been a drone operator, pushing buttons that killed people thousands of miles away. Each story was different, but they all had the same weight to them. The same tired acceptance of things they wished they hadn't needed to do. Finally, Krill looked at Tae-jin. The youngest human had been silent the whole time, staring at the floor. "And you?" the Threx officer asked. "What is your story?" Tae-jin didn't look up. His hands were clenched tight in his lap. "I was infantry. Ground soldier. They sent us to keep peace between 2 groups that hated each other. We were supposed to protect civilians, make sure aid got through." His voice was very quiet. "One day, fighters attacked a camp full of refugees. Women and children mostly. They had guns and grenades. We tried to stop them without killing anyone. We tried." He finally looked up. His eyes were red. "We failed. People died anyway, refugees and fighters both. And I was the one who, he couldn't finish." Hana reached over and squeezed his shoulder. Velnara's eyes had gone very dim. "You were children. Most of you were barely adults when you did these things." 18 years old when I enlisted, Daewon confirmed. 20 when I saw combat. But this is... Velnara seemed to be searching for words. "This is barbaric. Sending children to fight and kill. How can your civilization allow this?" "Because someone has to do it," Jiwoo said softly. Everyone turned to look at the doctor. I know I didn't raise my hand, but I understand why they did. In a perfect world, there would be no violence, no war, no need for soldiers. But we don't live in a perfect world. We live in the real world. And in the real world, sometimes good people have to do terrible things to protect others. Krill's mandibles clicked slowly. You speak as if this is normal, expected. On Earth it is, Kyung-soo said. My grandfather fought in a war. My father served during peacetime. I served and saw combat. Every generation of my family has worn a uniform. That's not unusual for humans. The second Threx officer spoke for the first time. Are humans dangerous? The question hung in the air. Nobody answered right away. Finally, Hana spoke. We can be, yes, so can you. So can anyone with enough pressure and the wrong circumstances. The difference is we know it. We train for it. We prepare for it. And we hope we never need it again. But Earth has been at peace for 17 years, Velnara said. Your wars are over. Why do you still train? Why do you still serve? Because 17 years is nothing, Daewon said. My parents remember worse wars. My grandparents remember wars that killed millions. Peace is wonderful. We're grateful for it, but it's also temporary. It has always been temporary for us. That sounds exhausting, Krill said. It is, Bora agreed, but it's also realistic. We don't want war. We hate war, but pretending it can't happen doesn't make us safer. It just makes us unprepared. Velnara turned to Dr. Jiwoo. You said you've never killed, but you also said you've made choices that ended lives. I don't understand the difference. Jiwoo was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was gentle but firm. When you have 3 patients dying and only supplies to save 2, you choose who lives. That's not the same as shooting someone. But the weight is the same, maybe heavier, because you have time to think about it. You look into their eyes, you know their names, and you still have to choose. That sounds unbearable, the Threx officer said. It is, but someone has to do it. Someone has to make the hard choices. I chose to be that person, so people like my colleagues could focus on keeping each other alive. Krill looked at all 12 humans. You protect each other. Even now you sit together. You support the youngest one when he struggles. You explain for each other. That's what soldiers do, Hana said. We look after our own. Velnara's eyes brightened again, but differently than before. Not with fear or confusion. With something that might have been understanding. You are not monsters. You are people who have seen terrible things and carry terrible burdens, and you came here to learn peace. We came here to learn how other species do it, Daewon corrected. How you maintain peace without preparing for war. How you trust that peace will last. We want to learn that. We want our world to be more like yours. But we can't forget what we've learned, Kyung-soo added. We can't pretend we don't know what humans are capable of. Good and bad. The room was quiet again. Outside, students passed by in the hallway, their voices and sounds mixing together. Life continued on the ship like normal. But in this classroom, something had changed. Krill and the other Threx officer exchanged looks. Some kind of silent communication. We need to report this to the council, Krill finally said. This information about humans, it changes our understanding of your species. Are we in trouble? Taejin asked. He sounded very young suddenly. Velnara moved closer. I don't know. The Union has never admitted a species so close to their violent past. Most species were peaceful for centuries before joining. You've been peaceful for less than 2 decades. She paused. I cannot predict what the council will decide. Will they send us home? Minho asked. I hope not, Velnara said, and she sounded like she meant it. I think perhaps we need you here, to remind us of things we've forgotten, but that is not my decision to make. The humans stood up slowly. They gathered their belongings in silence. As they filed toward the door, Velnara called out, Daewon, a moment. He stopped and turned back. The others hesitated, but Hana waved them on. We'll wait outside. When they were alone, Velnara approached him. Her crystalline body reflected the soft blue light of the walls. You answered my question honestly, she said. You could have lied. No one would have known. Yes, they would have, Daewon replied. Eventually. And lying would have been worse. Why? Because trust is the foundation of peace. If we lie about who we are, we can't build real relationships, real understanding. We came here to be part of something bigger than Earth. That only works if we're honest about what Earth is. Velnara's eyes pulsed softly. Your honesty may cost you your place here. The cafeteria was enormous, designed to feed thousands of students from dozens of different species. The air smelled like a mix of every food imaginable and some that weren't. Long tables stretched across the floor in organized rows. Some tables had regular chairs. Others had pools of water for aquatic species. Some had heat lamps or cold zones for creatures who needed different temperatures. Daewon carried his tray to the usual human table. It sat in the back corner, away from most of the others. Before yesterday, it had been crowded with mixed groups. Humans sitting with Felorans, Silesthene students stopping by to chat, even a few Threks sharing meals and conversation. Today, the humans sat alone. Every table around them was empty. A clear circle of space separated them from everyone else. Alien students whispered and pointed. Some stared openly. Others deliberately looked away as if even making eye contact was dangerous. Hana sat down across from Daewon and poked at her food without eating. This is getting old. It's only been 1 day, Kyung-soo said, but he didn't sound optimistic. Feels longer, Bo-ra muttered. She was watching a group of Feloran students who kept glancing their way and whispering. They look at us like we're going to attack them. Tae-jin wasn't eating either. He had barely touched his food. Maybe they're right to be scared. Don't, Hana said firmly. Don't do that. We're not monsters, aren't we? Tae-jin pushed his tray away. We killed people. That's what monsters do. Before anyone could respond, a small figure approached their table nervously. It was a Feloran student, one of the otter-like aliens with silver fur. She clutched her tray tightly, her whiskers twitching with anxiety. Her name tag said Mira. May I? She started, then stopped. May I sit with you? The humans all froze. This was the first alien who had approached them since yesterday. Hana recovered first and gestured to the empty bench. Of course, please. Mira sat down carefully, leaving more space than necessary between herself and the nearest human. Her large eyes darted between them, nervous but determined. I wanted to ask, she began, then had to stop and gather courage. Do you feel sorry? For the lives you took? Tae-jin stood up abruptly, his chair scraping loudly. He walked away without a word. Daewon watched him go with concern but didn't follow. Not yet. Tae-jin needed space sometimes. Every single day. Kyung-soo answered Mira's question quietly. It's not something you forget. Not something you make peace with. Then why did you do it? Because the alternative was worse, Hana said. Someone was going to die either way. We chose to protect the people who couldn't protect themselves. Mira's whiskers twitched as she processed this. On my world, we have stories about ancient times. Before civilization, when our ancestors fought over territory and food, we're taught those were dark times, times of shame. They probably were, Daewon agreed. But sometimes darkness comes back. Not because we want it, because circumstances force it. But you have laws. You have the United Nations. Why couldn't they stop the violence? They try, Bo-ra said. They succeed more often than they fail. But humans are complicated. We have almost 8 billion people. Hundreds of countries, thousands of cultures and religions and ways of living. Sometimes those differences clash. Sometimes they clash violently. Mira picked at her food nervously. Are you going to hurt anyone here? On this ship? The question was blunt, honest. The humans looked at each other. No, Hana said firmly. We came here to learn. To be part of something bigger. To build peace, not destroy it. But you know how to hurt people. You're trained for it. We're also trained to protect people, Daewon said. Being capable of violence doesn't mean choosing violence. Most humans go their whole lives without hurting anyone. But you didn't? No, we didn't. But we're not typical either. Most humans never serve in the military. Never see combat. Never have to make those choices. Mira was quiet for a long moment, eating slowly. The other humans resumed eating too, grateful for the company even if the conversation was difficult. In another part of the ship, Instructor Velnara sat in her private office, surrounded by holographic displays. She had been researching Earth for hours, diving deep into their historical records. What she found disturbed her deeply. Humans had records of organized warfare going back 10,000 years. Every generation had experienced conflict. Every century had seen major wars. The weapons changed, grew more efficient, more deadly, but the pattern never stopped. Only 17 years ago, Earth had finally achieved something resembling global peace. The wars had ended mostly. Small conflicts still erupted sometimes. but nothing like the massive wars of the previous centuries. Felnara read about World War I, World War II, the Korean War, Vietnam, the Gulf Wars, Afghanistan. So many names. So many dead. Millions upon millions of humans killing each other over territory, resources, ideology, religion. But she also found something else. For every record of violence, there were records of humans helping each other. Disaster relief, medical aid, peacekeeping missions, international cooperation, humans building hospitals in war zones, humans adopting orphans from enemy countries, humans risking their lives to save people they had never met. It was contradictory, confusing. How could the same species be so violent and so compassionate? She pulled up statistics comparing union species. When it came to charitable donations, humans gave more per capita than any other species. They volunteered more. They sent more aid to disaster zones even on other planets. Earth had barely joined the Union, but human organizations were already working to help alien species they had just met. The species that knew violence intimately seemed most dedicated to preventing it. Felnara's door chimed. "Enter," she called. Dr. Jiwoo stepped inside. The human doctor looked tired like she always did. But there was something peaceful about her despite the exhaustion. "You wanted to see me, instructor?" "Yes, please sit." Felnara gestured to a chair that adjusted itself to human proportions. "I've been thinking about what you said yesterday, about making choices that end lives without pulling a trigger. I still don't fully understand." Jiwoo settled into the chair. "What would you like to know?" "You're a healer. Your entire purpose is to save lives. How do you carry the weight of the ones you couldn't save? The same way your students carry the weight of their choices," Jiwoo said softly. "Badly, with difficulty. With guilt and nightmares and wondering if we could have done something different. But you continue. You still work as a doctor. Because stopping won't bring anyone back. The only thing I can do is keep trying to save the next person. And the next. And the next?" Velnara's eyes dimmed thoughtfully. "Do you consider yourself different from the soldiers? Because you heal instead of harm?" Jiwoo shook her head. "We're on the same team. They keep me alive so I can do my job. I keep them alive so they can do theirs. We all serve the same purpose, just different roles." "What purpose?" "Protecting people who can't protect themselves. Getting everyone home alive if possible. Minimizing damage when violence is unavoidable." The ship's alarm interrupted their conversation. A harsh sound filled the corridors, followed by an automated announcement in Galactic Standard. "Fire detected on Deck 7. All students evacuate immediately." "This is not a drill." Felnara and Jiwoo rushed to the door. Smoke was already visible in the hallway. Students were panicking, running in different directions, some away from the fire and some toward their quarters where they had left belongings. "Everyone moved to the emergency pods," Felnara shouted, but her voice was lost in the chaos. Then Daewon's voice cut through the noise, loud and commanding. "All students. Emergency exits are this way. Move quickly, but don't run. Stay calm." The humans had appeared from multiple directions. They weren't panicking. They were organizing. Hana was directing traffic at an intersection. Kyungsoo was helping a large Threk student who had frozen in fear. Bora was pulling fire extinguishers from the walls. Daewon saw Jiwoo and called out, "Doctor, set up triage at the emergency pod bay. We'll bring you anyone who's hurt." Jiwoo didn't hesitate. She ran toward the designated area while the other humans moved toward the fire. "What are you doing?" Velnara shouted at them. "Get to safety. After we make sure everyone else is safe." Daewon shouted back. He grabbed a fire blanket and headed toward the smoke. The fire had started in a residential area. Several student quarters were burning. The automated systems were fighting it, but something had malfunctioned. The fire was spreading. Daewon found Taejin already inside the smoke, carrying a small Faloran child. The young human's face was covered in soot and his arms showed burns, but he kept moving. "There are more inside," Taejin coughed. "I heard crying." "Show me!" Daewon followed him back into the smoke. They found 3 more Faloran students trapped in a room where the door had jammed. The heat was intense. The smoke was thick. But Daewon used his combat engineering training to force the door open, while Taejin shielded the smaller aliens with his body. Outside, Hana had organized the evacuation like a military operation. Every species knew where to go. Every path was clear. The confusion had turned into order under her direction. Bora and other humans fought the fire with extinguishers and blankets. containing it until the ship's main systems could reroute power to the damaged section. In the emergency pod bay, Jiwoo worked steadily through the injured. The council chamber was nothing like the classroom. It was massive, with curved walls that seemed to stretch forever. Seats arranged in circles rose up like an amphitheater. Representatives from 47 different species sat watching. The air hummed with translation devices working in dozens of languages at once. At the center, on a raised platform, stood the 12 human students and Ambassador Yujin. The ambassador was older, maybe in her 60s, with gray streaking through her black hair. She had been a war reporter before becoming a diplomat. She knew how to speak to people who didn't want to listen. Across from them, the council members sat in judgment. Most prominent was Counselor Thrain, an ancient being that existed as a consciousness inside a large crystal structure. Light moved through the crystal in patterns that represented thoughts. Thrain had lived for thousands of years and watched countless civilizations rise and fall. This inquiry is now open. Thrain's voice resonated through the chamber, translated instantly for everyone present. We must determine whether humanity's admission to the Galactic Union was an error, whether a species so close to their violent past can truly be trusted in our peaceful alliance. The words hung heavy in the air. Daewon felt his stomach tighten. Everything depended on what happened next, not just for the 12 of them, but for all of Earth. A Meridian counselor, floating in a sphere filled with blue gel, spoke first. The humans have admitted to killing, to warfare, to violence on a scale we find difficult to comprehend. They claim to be civilized, yet every one of their representatives has taken sentient life. How can we trust such a species? Ambassador Yujin stepped forward. Honorable counselors, my students told you the truth when asked a direct question. They could have lied. No one would have known. But they chose honesty. I ask you to consider what that means. It means they are honest about being dangerous, the Meridian replied. That does not make them less dangerous. With respect, Yujin continued, violence is not unique to humans. Every species here has a past. What matters is the present and the future. Thrain's crystal pulsed thoughtfully. Your words have merit, but humanity is different. Other species evolved past violence before reaching the stars. You brought your capacity for warfare with you into space. This concerns us. Krill, the Threx security officer, stood from his seat. May I speak, counselor? You may. I have reviewed Threx history. Our species fought wars for 8,000 years before achieving peace. We had tribal conflicts, territory disputes, wars over resources and ideology. We killed our own kind repeatedly. The chamber went quiet. This was not common knowledge. Most species didn't discuss their violent pasts. How long ago did the Threx achieve peace? Daewon asked, his voice clear in the silence. 1,247 years ago, Krill answered. And humans achieved peace 17 years ago, Daewon said. We're not different from you. We're just earlier in the process. You've had over 1,000 years to forget what war feels like. We've had less than 2 decades. A Celestine counselor, made of green crystal, spoke up. But you still prepare for war. You still train soldiers. Why, if you claim to want peace? Hana stepped forward. Because we remember. We know what happens when peaceful people are unprepared for violence. History taught us that lesson too many times. Being ready for war doesn't mean wanting war. It means being realistic about the universe we live in. She gestured, and a holographic display appeared. It showed Earth's timeline. 200 years ago, we fought with muskets and cannons. Hundreds of thousands died. 50 years after that, we had machine guns and chemical weapons. Millions died. We developed nuclear weapons, bombs powerful enough to destroy our entire planet. We came within minutes of using them. Nuclear annihilation. The end of our species. The display shifted, showing the moment during the Cold War when the world had almost ended. But we didn't. We chose to step back. We established treaties. We built communication systems. We created international laws about war and peace. You still have those weapons, a counselor pointed out. Yes, Hana admitted, but we haven't used them in 80 years. We've had the power to destroy ourselves for almost a century, and we've chosen not to. That has to count for something, Bora added. 20 years ago, we discovered we weren't alone in the universe. Some people wanted to weaponize that knowledge, build defenses against aliens, prepare for invasion, but we chose differently. We reached out. We joined you. We're here because we picked cooperation over fear. Dr. Jiwoo was called forward. She walked slowly to the center, her calm presence somehow filling the huge chamber. Dr. Choi, Thrain said, "You are unique among the humans here. You did not raise your hand when asked about killing." "Why?" "Because I never pulled a trigger, counselor. But I made choices that ended lives just as surely. I'm not innocent, just different." "Explain." Jiwoo took a breath. "You exist as a consciousness in crystal. You've never known physical vulnerability. You've never felt pain or fear of death. Most species here evolved as herd animals or prey species. You developed civilization as protection against natural dangers. And humans? Humans evolved as hunters, predators. That's our biology. We're designed to track, to chase, to kill. For most of our evolution, that's how we survived." The chamber filled with uncomfortable sounds, whispers and clicks and musical tones of concern. "But," Jiwoo continued firmly, "biology isn't destiny. Yes, we're capable of violence, but we're also capable of incredible compassion. We invented medicine not just to heal ourselves, but to heal other species. We create art about the horrors of war so we never forget the cost. We teach our children that violence is always the last option, never the first." "You want to know if humans are dangerous?" She looked around at all the counselors. "Yes, we are. But we're dangerous the way a surgeon's knife is dangerous. Capable of causing harm but trained and dedicated to healing instead. We know what we can do, and that knowledge makes us careful, not reckless." The Meridian counselor wasn't satisfied. "Yet most of you have failed to avoid violence. You claim restraint, but your actions show otherwise." "That's backwards," Jiwoo said quietly. "My colleagues didn't fail to avoid violence. They succeeded in limiting it. Every human here has had training and opportunities to kill far more than they did. They were given weapons, given authority, put in situations where violence was permitted, and they used only the minimum force necessary. They followed rules. They protected non-combatants. They stopped when threats ended. That's not failure," she said, her voice growing stronger. "That's extraordinary restraint. That's civilization in action. Not the absence of violence, but the choice to limit it even when you have the power to do more." Thrain's crystal pulsed with deep thought. "Your words have weight, Dr. Choi. But this council must consider practical matters. Can the Union trust humanity? Can we predict your behavior? Can we be certain you won't bring warfare to the stars?" Ambassador Yujin spoke up. "No one can give you that certainty, counselor. Not about humans, not about any species. Peace is not guaranteed. It's chosen every day by individuals and societies making decisions about how to act. But you can look at our actions," she continued. "We had faster-than-light travel for 5 years before making first contact with the Union. 5 years when we could have explored in secret, built weapons, prepared for conflict. We chose transparency instead. We shared our technology. We opened our planet to inspection. We sent diplomats, not soldiers." Kyung-soo added, "Most Union species didn't achieve space travel until centuries after their last war. We achieved it during peacetime, but barely. We're learning to be peaceful while still remembering war. That's harder than never having to fight in the first place." A younger counselor, barely 50 years old in a species that lived for centuries, asked, "What happens if your peace breaks? If humanity returns to war?" The question hung in the air. Tae-jin, who had been silent until now, spoke up. "Then we fail," he said simply. "We fail as a species. We fail the people we killed in past wars. We fail the future we're trying to build. We fail ourselves." His voice was rough with emotion. "Every human here carries the weight of what we've done. We have nightmares, we have guilt. Some of us can barely function because of what we've seen and done. You think we want to go back to that? You think we want more war?" "We know exactly what war costs," he continued. "Not from history books, from personal experience. That's why we're here. to learn how you maintain peace, to understand how species stop fighting and stay stopped. We need that knowledge. Earth needs it. Thrain was silent for a long moment. Then the ancient being's voice filled the chamber. I have witnessed 89 species join this union. All of them experienced violence in their past. The Threx had their wars. The Celestine had purges. The Felorans had pack conflicts. Every civilization reaches a point where they must choose between continuing violence or breaking the cycle. The crystal pulsed with memory. What troubles me about humanity is not your violent history. It's how recent that history is. The weapons are still warm. The memories still fresh. The wounds still healing. But perhaps the light in the crystal changed, became softer. Perhaps that freshness is exactly why you belong here. You remember what the rest of us have forgotten. 3 days felt like 3 years. The humans tried to maintain their normal routine, attending classes and eating meals. But the weight of waiting pressed down on all of them. Everything they had worked for, everything Earth had built toward joining the galactic community, hung in the balance. Tai Jin stopped sleeping entirely. Dark circles formed under his eyes. He spent his nights in the observation deck, staring out at the stars. Daewon found him there on the second night. Can't sleep either, Daewon asked, settling beside the younger man. Every time I close my eyes, I see them. The people I killed, the refugees I couldn't save. Taejin's voice was hollow. If they send us home because of what we did, maybe that's justice. Maybe we deserve it. Maybe, Daewon said quietly. But that's not how justice works. We did what we thought was right at the time. What we were trained to do. What our governments ordered us to do. That doesn't erase the consequences, but it matters. Does it? I think so. The difference between murder and warfare is context, authority, rules of engagement. We followed the rules. We tried to minimize casualties. We stopped when the threat ended. That's not nothing. Taejin was quiet for a long time. What if we go home? What if they reject us? Then we keep trying. Keep working for peace. Keep proving we're more than our worst moments. Daewon looked out at the stars. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think they're going to surprise us. Something unexpected was happening on the ship. While the council deliberated, the alien students were having their own discussions. It started small, with Mira talking to her forlorn friends about the humans who saved her brother. Then others joined in. The Threx students who had watched humans organize during the fire. The Celestine who had studied alongside them. On the third day, Mira did something unprecedented. She created a petition and started gathering signatures. The petition was simple and direct. The humans scared us with their honesty. Then they saved us with their actions. Judge them by both, not just one. Within hours, over 200 students had signed. Aliens from every species on the ship. They brought the petition to the council chambers demanding to be heard. The council had never seen anything like it. Students didn't typically involve themselves in political decisions, but these students had lived with the humans, studied with them, been saved by them during the fire. They knew the humans in ways the distant counselors didn't. Faculty members added their voices too. Velnara submitted a detailed report about human behavior in her classes. Other instructors described the humans' dedication to learning, their respect for other species, their careful consideration of different viewpoints. Even some counselors began changing their minds. The Threx representative, after reviewing his own species' history more thoroughly, realized how similar the patterns were. The Celestine counselor found records of their own violent past that had been buried in sanitized history texts. On the morning of the third day, the humans were summoned to the council chamber again. They walked together, trying to prepare themselves for whatever verdict came. The chamber was packed. Not just with counselors, but with students and faculty who had come to witness the decision. The humans stood at the center again, Ambassador Yu-Jin with them. Counselor Thrain's crystal pulsed with light as the ancient being began to speak. This council has deliberated extensively. We have reviewed Earth's history. We have examined human behavior aboard this vessel. We have listened to testimony from students and faculty who have lived alongside humans. We have debated the nature of civilization, the meaning of peace, and the requirements for union membership. The chamber was completely silent. Everyone waited. Humanity presents us with a paradox, Thrain continued. You are simultaneously one of the most violent species ever admitted to the Union, and one of the most dedicated to preventing violence. You kill and you heal. You wage war and you broker peace. This contradiction troubled us greatly. Day-Wan felt his heart pounding. This could go either way. However, we have concluded that this is not actually a contradiction. It is complexity. It is honesty. It is the mark of a species that understands itself deeply enough to acknowledge both its capacity for harm and its dedication to doing better. The light in Thrain's crystal shifted, became warmer. We have also been reminded of things we had forgotten. Every species in this union has violence in their past. The Threx fought wars for 8,000 years. The Celestine conquered and destroyed. The Felorans had pack wars that nearly wiped out their civilization. We are no different from humanity. We have simply had longer to forget. A murmur ran through the chamber. Some counselors looked uncomfortable at having their histories mentioned so openly. Therefore, Thrain announced, humanity's probationary membership is hereby confirmed and converted to full membership in the Galactic Union. Relief flooded through Day-Wan. Beside him, Hana grabbed his hand and squeezed. Tae-Jin actually smiled for the first time in days, but Thrain wasn't finished. However, this membership comes with a unique condition. Earth will establish a new division within the Union structure. We are calling it the Conflict Resolution and Historical Memory Corps. Humans, with your recent experience and institutional memory of warfare, will help other species prevent conflicts before they begin. You will serve as mediators in disputes. You will teach courses on conflict resolution, ethical warfare, and the true cost of violence. You will help us remember what we have forgotten. Ambassador Yu-Jin stepped forward. The Council honors us with this responsibility. We accept. Furthermore, Thrain continued, human military veterans will be invited to teach at Union institutions. Not warfare but restraint. Not violence but the importance of avoiding it. You will help us understand what you understand. That peace is not the absence of conflict, but the choice to resolve conflict without violence. The chamber erupted. Some counselors applauded. Students cheered. Even those who had been most opposed seemed satisfied with the solution. As the humans left the chamber, they were surrounded by well-wishers. Mira pushed through the crowd to reach Tae-Jin. You're staying, she said happily. I'm so glad. Tae-Jin knelt down to her level. Thank you for the petition, for speaking up for us. You saved my brother. You ran into fire to save aliens you barely knew. That says more about who you are than anything you did in war. Her whiskers twitched. Besides, every species here has ancestors who fought and killed. You're just honest about it. Over the next few days, things changed aboard the Concordia. The humans were no longer isolated. Alien students sat with them at meals asking questions about Earth and human culture. Classes became discussions instead of lectures, with humans offering perspectives that other species hadn't considered. Day-Wan was offered a position designing safety systems for Union vessels. His combat engineering experience translated perfectly into preventing disasters. He accepted, finding purpose in protection instead of destruction. Hana became a liaison between human and alien cultures, teaching communication strategies and helping bridge gaps between species that thought differently. Kyung-Soo started teaching a course on logistics and resource management, skills he had learned keeping supply lines running during military operations. Borod joined the new Conflict Resolution Corps, working to identify brewing disputes between species before they escalated into serious problems. Tae-Jin, the youngest and most traumatized, finally agreed to see Dr. Ji-Woo regularly. She connected him with a Feloran therapist who specialized in helping survivors of violence. It would be a long process, but he was finally willing to start healing. Dr. Ji-Woo herself was appointed to lead a new medical ethics program. She would teach other species about impossible choices, about triage and battlefield medicine, and the moral weight of healing in violent circumstances. 2 weeks after the Council's decision, Velnara's ethics class resumed. The room was full again with aliens sitting beside humans without fear or hesitation. The instructor stood at the front, her crystalline body reflecting the warm light of the walls. Last time I taught this class, I asked a question, she began. I asked who had killed. The answer shocked me and challenged everything I thought I understood about civilization. She paused, looking around the room at the mix of students. Today I want to ask a different question. Who here has chosen not to kill when they had the opportunity? Slowly hands began to rise. Human hands first, then alien appendages and tentacles and limbs. Within moments, every being in the room had raised something. Everyone had made that choice at some point. Good, Velnara said, her eyes glowing bright with satisfaction. Because that's the harder choice. That's the choice that defines us. Not our capacity for violence, but our refusal to use it unless absolutely necessary. She looked directly at the humans. You've all taken lives. You've all made impossible choices. You've all carried weights that would crush most beings. And yet you chose to come here, to learn peace instead of teaching war. That's courage, her gaze swept across the alien students. The rest of us have been fortunate enough never to face those choices. We thought that made us civilized. We thought avoiding violence meant we had transcended it. She paused. But perhaps civilization isn't the absence of violence. Perhaps it's the choice to transcend it, even when you know exactly what it costs.